Hello. I hope sound is working all right. Let's see.
It is. I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay, perfect.
Yes, it should be. Okay. How are you?
Are you in a different place
today?
today?
I know, because I plugged this mic in. It doesn't want me to hear you, so I'm going to take this one out because I won't be able to hear you on this.
Can you hear me yet? Can you hear me? This is what our entire world has been composed of. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I know. I'm having to work out of my kitchen since I've had the fire in my office.
You had a fire in your office?
I had a fire in my office. So it's totally thrown my way I work out of whack. So thank God for
iPads. Would think.
Thank God for iPads and my MacBook Pro, because I'm not being able to use my powerful computers in, full setup. So I'm in my kitchen.
Were you there when the fire happened, or was it like a plug thing?
No. So I was doing my Friday evenings, my India classes, right? So the India class thing. So it was the break. So it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So I give them an hour and a half break. And I decided not to nap this break, that I would watch the Aretha Franklin mini documentary thing. Because I spotted it, I thought, ooh, I'll watch that, right? And even though I don't get it finished, I'll get some of it done and I can watch the rest like kind of Sunday. And then I'm sitting on the couch and my alarms start going off, right? I'm like, what the heck are my alarms going? And I go and I turn them all off, right? Because I just think they'd be crazy. And I was getting ready to call my daughter, right? To go, these stupid alarms are going off. Why the heck are these going off? What's the code again? Am I using the right code? And then I started to smell the smell. And I'm like, I didn't warm anything up on the stove. I haven't left anything on the stove. I used the microwave. And then it went off again. I go back to turn it all off. And then it just wouldn't go off, right? And so then I walked further down the hallway, because I got that long, ridiculous hallway. So I walked further down the hallway and I've got French doors to my office. I look in, flames. So I go and I grab towels and soak them in cold water and all the rest of that. So like 3 big towels, and tried the first one, second one, third one, got it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, we're technically live, and I'm totally involved.
I know it's not quite the conversation, but yeah. So it's kind of been it's been odd since. So Mother's Day was still like, okay, well, there's still all this ash in there, and you're talking with the insurance company, and do you bother to make the claim? And then when the insurance tells you deductible, do I just fix it myself? Blah 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 blah. So I brought my cleaners in and got them to get rid of all the ash and wipe everything down. But I've attempted to go in there several times to see if I can get back to working in there, but the air still kind of has my chest really tight. So I'm probably gonna have to I think I might have to just do the whole repaint the office. So
I'm so, I'm not glad that it happened, but I'm so glad that you were awake and they were there, right?
Oh. Yeah, it was really odd. It was just very odd. And I came after the fire went out. I came and sat down on my couch, and I was like, okay, so what was that really about? That's the question I asked, because it just seems so odd, right? Because a lot, I burn candles all the time. Okay, I'm a candle person, right? So I got candles burning in my bedroom. I got candles burning upstairs. I've always got candles burning. And it was just weird, because I was sharing last week that it didn't burn my product box, but it burnt through the printer. Right, and burnt through my aromatherapy machine and the top of my desk. Right, my nice pretty white stuff in the back, just burnt through all of that, but didn't burn my box. So I still had my box, and my box was right next to everything. So the candle was actually here. Here was the box. There's the aromatherapy machine. Here's the printer. All through that stuff. So it's been interesting. It's been
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's not.
But
I love the fact though, because we've had a conversation about your alarm for those watching as they jump on. We've had a conversation about her alarm and like how much it beeps like for a while now. And so I can totally see you going like, why is it beeping again? I get it totally.
That is exactly because everybody's like, you always got the silly beep going in the background. I'm like, I thought I turned this beep. Beep. You know. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad everything overall is fine. But man, what drama? What drama? Okay, well we'll get kicked off officially now.
Wasn't this to get kicked off?
Yeah. So my name is Trisha Broderick, and this is Lizzie Morris. And we have been friends for quite some time, but we're also colleagues in the Agile community, and we train and we coach and do different things in helping, especially leaders, create the kind of environments for complex work. But with our friendship, we've had lots of interesting conversations over the years. And recently, or not recently, I guess at this point, last year, during one of our conversations on the phone, Lizzie said, well, I wish people could see this. Well, I wish people could hear this conversation and the ability to just have this discussion. And I, in that moment, went, well, why can't they? Let's put it online. And so the next thing we know, we're doing this every other Thursday and having discussions about racial equity and just what it means to really be inclusive. Guaranteed, one of us, if not both of us, will say something wrong or something that we need to learn about. But that's part of it. That's part of this journey and growing.
It's ever learning.
I just did it. I just sent out like this invite for some Agile women to like meet up for like a happy hour selfishly on my part. And I didn't include non-binary. And one of our Agile colleagues particularly is non-binary. And I was like, and I woke up this morning at 5 this morning and a total like, oh my gosh, I just did and I sent an immediate message to her or I just did it today.
Right. Yes.
Today. And to acknowledge it. And I'm still, the reality is I haven't seen they since for a while with the comment. And so I'm still getting it stuck in my retraining myself and relearning and it's but I don't want to insult, and so I'm immediately apologizing, I'm immediately acknowledging and then making the adjustment, right? So this is part of what this is us having these conversations and learning and growing together. And we realize, or at least I ended up realizing, that a lot of people I knew didn't necessarily have a diverse set of friends that they could have these conversations with. So we are doing that. And then, Liz, you want to kind of talk to a little bit of the corporate dynamic of why we're even not only is this valuable to our friends personally, but professionally as well.
But professionally is probably the biggest burden, right? And it's not that we're not talking about being burdened by what's happening in our community at large. But when we look at the corporate scene, which is where we spend a lot of our time, right? And a lot of our customers and clients are kind of in that corporate space. Because we spend so much time there, one of the things I became very cognizant of is lobbyists get paid by companies. And companies that come together as conglomerates. So if we really want some of the laws and the things to change, we need the companies that finance the lobbyists, who get the politicians, making them go the different directions. That's where we need to affect change. And if corporations don't affect change, our world really won't change, ultimately, right? So if we start to do a lot more demanding of leaders and demanding of ourselves and our behaviors inside of corporate organizations, we will start to make effects. Because sadly, but current facts, I'm not saying it's a truth, I'm just saying current facts, knowing it's subject to change, is that money drives a lot of things that happen. And if people's pockets are hurt and they are publicly shamed socially, it then hurts their pockets. So they're more willing to do things to really make their climates more hospitable for all types of humans.
It was interesting after some of the Georgia voting things and adjustments and how many of the corporations responded. And I remember seeing a video Senator Mitch McConnell going, corporations need to stay out of politics, and the level of irony that people hit him with, like, really? Like, are you kidding me right now? And so once you were talking about that, I immediately went back to that moment of where people were just raking him over the coals because they're like, what are you talking about? Of course corporations are going to react, and you didn't have a problem with that
when they were going your direction and they were supporting your causes and your initiatives. But now that they've had to make some organizations have had to make some really hard turns, right? And sadly, some still think diversity and inclusion is an event.
A check mark.
Right. So they've checked it now and they're done. But it is a continuous activity, journey that you've got to stay on. And it doesn't stop. And it doesn't stop for individuals, doesn't stop for teams.
I mean, I have no idea what made me wake up at 5 this morning and realize that I did that. Like, it would just, my brain finally thought of it.
But you know what's so interesting? The Tuesday show that I do, The Link, right?
Yeah.
Called The Whole Thing About Sisterhood. We were talking, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I need to make sure, because what I'm saying is we're talking about feminine energy, right? And people who identify as women and women linking together. So that includes transgender women who are coming in because that's their energy. The human casing doesn't align to it yet, but they align to it. That's their spirit. And I was like, oh, we need to do, I need to include something with that. Then I'm going to have to talk to that to make sure that they're welcome too, because we're talking about the power of sisterhood, not the power of the packaging, but the power of the spirit of sisterhood. So these are things sometimes you're just ignorant because it hasn't come into your face for you to consider it. So just like we say in organizations, you go to your default, right? Our default's waterfall, and it takes a long time for that to no longer be your default. Our default is a certain pattern of what people look like or identify as. And so you have to keep going, no, let's break that, no, reprogram, wipe that clean again, reprogram, wipe that clean again, until it sticks. And it becomes your nature to think that way.
Well, and that's part of the conversation. Like even today, just now, I was like, oh, I am getting faster at catching it, right? Like, and that's part of it is like, it is a habit. It is something, and I could have good intent. And I think that's the interesting thing for so many white people that I'm interacting with is like, doing something that causes impact doesn't mean that you didn't have good intent and doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but it is how you've got to acknowledge and grow, right? Like, it's like, oh, dang it, I just did it. Like, and then move on, right? Like, and learn and adjust it. Because the more, it's like breaking any habit or any tick that you have, it takes a bit of time. It takes multiple
It takes time, it takes effort, but it first takes desire. It first takes desire, right? So one of the things we can be happy on is that we have the desire. One of the things we can be happy on is a lot of the people who we're in community with have the desire. And it starts with the desire of, I want it to be better. I want people to feel it. This is my desire. This is my desire. Then I'm going to form an intention around it. And when my intention isn't visible, I'm going to do more work, right, to align it that way, regardless of the crowds that I'm in at the time. And that's the challenge. That's where it comes to work, regardless of the crowds that you're currently in at the time, sticking to what it is your desire is, your truth, right? And
being a role model even, right? Setting an example.
I'm putting yourself out there and calling yourself out. My classic I'm having to keep calling myself out for is saying guys.
Oh, I'm bad.
Because with the training, okay, guys, come on, it's just been such a word, and you're like, gotta stop doing that. So
did I ever tell you the moment that I really kind of like, I say that all the time too, and I'm still trying to break the habit. And I was working with somebody else because they got the feedback that it wasn't inclusive. And honestly, I will own this, right? I logically got it, but I wasn't super, as you said, the desire to like really break that habit because it's not offensive to me, right? Like, but I wasn't opposed to it either personally for a little while. But I actually started working with somebody else and trying to do it. And as I was going, I'm like, let's not worry right this moment about whether it's right or wrong, or whether it's worth it or not worth it. Let's just explore some alternatives. And so we were going through this whole list, like friends and people and y'all and peeps. And he was like, y'all, I'm not from the South. And when I said peeps, he's like, I'm not a teenager. and like, so we were going through all these different examples, right? And then I threw out there, I said, what about ladies? And he's like, I can't do that. And I said, well, why? And he's like, and he paused and he's like, because it would be insulting. I know that if I called a man and referred to the general as ladies, it would be quote unquote an insult. And so if I am cognizant, like immediately know that that's an insult and that I wouldn't do it, then I need to recognize and respect that calling everybody generalized guys could be an insult as well. Right. And why is one not, right? Versus one is. And so the minute, and honestly, I'm trying to help him just come up with some alternatives, but me even doing that exercise with him helped me go,
exercise for you too.
Oh yeah, I totally need to break this habit. Like it wasn't that I was before like dismissive of it. I wasn't trying to, it just wasn't, it didn't seem in the grand scheme of things the top priority. But these little things add up, and all little things and
add up to the big stuff. The small steps add up to the big stuff. And that's the thing with us as Agilists. That's the one thing we can bring to the table that others might not bring to the table.
You mean plan a little, do a little, learn a little?
Yeah, right. Imagine that. A little bit more. Yeah, just do a little bit more. Right? Do a little bit more. And check if we're doing, is this a little bit more making a difference?
Repeat.
Right? And it's the constant rinse and repeat of doing it. We do it so much. Those of us who have become what I call agile to the core, so we live and breathe that. That's just the way we think and we do, right? We do it in our everyday living, in everything that we do.
Yep.
So why not bring that same ethos into the corporate space, which, again, and I know I've said this before, this is why I believe as the Agile community, we should really be leading in this area. And it should really become part of our coaching stances, right? Part of our articulation, part of the frameworks that we do when we're doing company organizational change. It's got to be this big, huge part of that. I was talking to some students yesterday because I did a advanced product owner class.
Okay.
And they were saying, okay, Lizzie, what do you think, what are some of those things you would talk to when it comes to the change essence? Because we got this problem also. I said, leadership have really got to come to a place where they make some really strong decisions. Because if they don't first make the decisions that they're serious about, that they want change, and they understand in doing this thing, it is a change program. It is not an agile transformation. It is a change program with the intention of embracing agile principles and values as your new tenants, right? But if you miss the change part, you miss the people part.
I just wrote did you read my blog post? I just wrote a blog post that said, I had a client that basically was like, can you install Agile? So I was laughing. I was like, literally just put that blog post out. but I think, like change is up there, right? With public speaking and death and snakes and spiders in terms of fear for people. And yet it seems like it's all we've ever done since we were born is change.
But we haven't recognized it as part of life for real.
Say more.
So like when you think, so think about it. We all breathe, right? But then people go to breathing coaches, right? And people go to inner healing and wellness, and they teach you how to breathe. I've been breathing my whole life. I breathe. Right? No, you really don't.
Or when I see my kid run and I'm like, oh God.
And they teach you, and you have to relearn how to breathe well. I believe what we have to do is to help people learn to change well. So change is no longer just, it's change is happening. Change is going to happen today. Let me prepare myself for the change that's going to happen today, even though I don't know what it is yet. So the change muscle becomes really, really flexible, really, really well used. And the more well used it becomes, when people look at you, it looks like, oh my God, you just adapt to everything. So it's so easy for you. No, it's just, we've been working this change muscle.
I remember I had, when I left a company, I was leaving a company and people were making comments. And one of my favorite comments I ever heard was this UX designer. And she said, you helped us become so accustomed to change that now when we're not changing, I'm nervous. Right. Like, and at the time, right in that moment, I was like, is that a compliment? And then, but the reality is it really is, right? It is, because it's like building confidence in your abilities. It's building, and then what you gain from often that change. You know, whether it's new perspectives, new experiences, new voices, new experience, just memories, right? Mm-hmm. But change. So one of the things that I'm seeing so much with like the racial dynamic is the change for a lot of people doesn't feel like evolving and expanding. It feels like taking away from me. I don't really understand this personally, okay? But I'm going to try and highlight that. Like, as I have a lot of these conversations with, as my good friend Tamika says, with my cousins, right? Like, with different white people, it never feels like when I'm in corporate and I'm doing change, a lot of times I can focus on that. Let's evolve, let's grow, let's expand, right? In this dynamic, when it's tied to some level of intersectionality, race, gender, whatever, the approach is never about expansion. It always feels like it's pie and like you're taking something from me. Mm-hmm. And I'm still trying to figure out why that reaction and then how to help get beyond it. To see what you gain, right? To experience those things or get that, as you put it earlier, desire mm-hmm. to actually want to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder, I've been doing not so much this week.
You've kind of had your hands full this week.
Not so much this week. But weeks before, I've been watching a lot of little clippets from lots of different shows, funny shows, right? Shows that aren't so funny. And I'm looking at how they're trying to let the consciousness of the world be more open, right? So every show I've watched has got somebody who's gay or somebody who's experimenting or somebody who's going through the transition of from one to another, or somebody who's just I'm just all things at all times and I don't want to define myself as anything. And I'm seeing that too, right? So everything's got a little bit of sprinkle. And then if you go back 5 years, you didn't see that.
No. Unless you went intentionally, right? Like you had
to. You have to go hunt it out. So like you have to go hunt for the L word or blah, blah, blah. You got to go hunt for some shows, right? But it wasn't just in everything. So now I'm seeing it in cartoons. Just everything has a little bit of a sprinkle of it. Mm-hmm. So that it's becoming more of a norm to see, so that people should be better at digesting it. Right now, there are those who complain about this concept, that it's everywhere, it's desensitizing people. But I think it's trying to allow us to do what you call expand. Because if we don't
not
expand,
so shocking, like they keep getting introduced to it more and more.
Expand, we won't make room. Do you know what I mean? There won't be room. It's only room for this definition because there's no expansion. So if this is the only space I have for definition, if you are inviting change into my small little space and I haven't expanded, you are taking away because now you're making my space smaller for me.
I guess I think that's the part that I don't connect with because,
it's because
it doesn't take, like, you add space, you add experiences.
But I have to have the room and the psyche for expansion.
Well, and I think the other dynamic that comes into it, and maybe this is why I can't register with it as much, is because I'm the other part, and I don't know if we talked about this last week. I don't know, last time, but like there is a difference between I have a Black friend or I have a gay friend, and I know somebody who's Black. And I think we have gotten to a place where a lot of people confuse friend and friendly.
Oh, I love that. Explore that, because that's fabulous. Right there, that's fabulous.
Right? Like I was talking to a family member and they're like, "No, I know so and so." And I'm like, "Okay, you know her." And I was like, "But that doesn't make her your friend." Well, Trisha, we wave, we say hi, we ask how. Did you tell her about Connor, which is my son who passed away? And she's like, "Well, no." And I'm like, "She's not your friend." Like there's a difference between being friendly with a neighbor and truly hearing their, like being in a relationship to a point where they're comfortable to not code switch or to not, right, like to let you into that space to a certain degree. And so maybe I'm pulling these two things together because for me, I don't think of those relationships when I'm learning and trying to do things as friendly. I think of them as potential new relationships, which hence will expand my.
Right. So you're looking at making connections.
Making friends versus trying to keep the peace versus just being civil, friendly, which would very much then just means I feel uncomfortable. I feel bad. Oh, I'm totally like in my head.
Not that I'm
totally making sense to me a little bit. Right?
Because if I'm friendly, hi, bye. But if we have a connection, I stay connected with you as you do your journey.
Because I'm such a connected like a connector, like I'm horrible, but that's why for me it automatically like I can't think of why you would think it keeps your space small. But if you're just trying to be friendly, you're actually making me feel bad and guilt and shame for doing something. Hence, I don't want to feel friendly to you and I'm locking down.
Yeah, there's a big
versus if you're my friend and I hurt you, I'm sending you a text at 5 a.m, even though they never, I will get it at some point. I will get it. Even though they never contacted me about it, like, and they've already graciously responded back and it's good. Right. But like, it was something that was important to me because it was a relationship, wasn't just, I'll see that person occasionally.
But I think it's one of the things, I haven't been writing for a really long time and I've got like a whole backlog of things I want to write about. And one of the first things I'm going to write about is the need for connection, for collaboration. Because here's the thing, we are doing friendly, right? And we're trying to call, right? And we're trying to call, we're looking for huge connections from friendly. You don't get that from friendly. You get friendly. You just don't get them. So you can't care for
In fact, you get more frustration, right? Because like, I'm even thinking about it now as like there was somebody that I was trying to get to know and stuff. And my way of getting to know is engaging in these kinds of conversations. Like, that's my thing. It's real, it's deep, right? And clearly I'm not doing it on day one, but like, still, I will engage in conversations. And when that person is just trying to be friendly, they are so off-put by my going deeper.
Yeah, because you're going way too deep. Oh, whoa,
like, I don't want to talk about that. Why do you want to talk about that? I don't want to talk about that.
What are you doing? We're friendly here. Whoa, you're bringing me in too deep. What are you doing? Back it up.
Holy
it's too much.
Crap.
Right.
And I just like, you're making me think about this, because I was like, that seems like an intense, like, don't you have these conversations with people? like I'm just having that seems a rather intense reaction to a question.
It's kind of like, how's the weather? Think about it. You have got neighbors, right? And then you have got neighbors.
Okay? This was with the neighbor.
You know what I mean? You've got neighbors, and then you got your neighbors, right?
Yeah.
Now, your neighbors, you just, hi, yes, isn't the weather? Oh, your grass is looking nice, blah, 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 blah.
No one would ever say that to us, by the way, just FYI.
Right? You've never seen the inside of their house. They've never seen the inside of your house.
Yeah.
Friendly. Then you've got your neighbors, right? They've come into your house. They've been in your kitchen. You've been in their kitchen. You sat down, watched me. There's connection.
Yeah. And I think the interesting part, and this is why I can make that separation, is like, then you've got like this neighborhood has a lot of like little, like, a book club or sorry, right? Like different little things, which almost gives the impression that you could, like an avenue if you chose to be friends. But I just naturally try to go down that avenue generally.
Mm-hmm.
But when, and I can do it on many topics, but whenever I do a race or on any underrepresented minority dynamic, intersectionality, unless they're in alignment or in, like exploring in that growth mindset, that desire's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
It's not.
Yeah, I am digging this.
I tick my box.
Tied to friendly.
Humane box. Right. So friendly ticks my humane box. I'm not a bad person.
Yeah, because I'm nice. I wait.
Right. Tick.
I know that person.
Take one more step where I'm going to engage with you now. I'm going to connect, right? So I'm going to go from hello to connection. Maybe not. Maybe that's too scary. Maybe that's too risky.
Well, I think it's too scary I think it's too scary, especially with, and maybe this is part of my thing too, is I have to consider and think about, and when we're trying to make change, right? And even in a corporation or any kind of environment, like building that connection on certain topics that we're going to be able to build a stronger foundation on first to getting that. I don't know if I have the patience. If I'm completely honest.
This thing is a long haul. This is a long haul. This is not a short trip.
I had to eat my
not a short trip, which means your patience have got to be longer as well, Trish.
Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to, and I think the other thing that I'm trying to do too is to look for people that are going to have those bridges faster than I will in this sense. So like, I am not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent. I don't really like the two-party system at all. Okay, I'm being kind when I say that. I hate the two-party system. But like, I have said for a very long time, like, I just want people to speak up, right? Like stop gaslighting. And so, it like kind of hurt me to my core to do this, because I really dislike what this person did to her own family years ago. But like, I acknowledged Liz Cheney this week and was like, what she's doing exemplifies leadership and what we need in corporations, right? Of saying, not necessarily all our policies. And I don't like, I'm trying to separate that for a second of just saying she's not lying. She's not just going with where it keeps her in power. She's not letting certain choices run her ethics and authenticity with it. And so I want to acknowledge that, with the hopes, though, also as we're talking about this, that there's maybe somebody out there that does align very heavily with Liz Cheney, Senator Liz, or Representative Liz Cheney. And maybe they can get there a little bit faster because they have a solid foundation connection with that, than feeling such a big difference to me.
And see, this is why I always say there's different people for different folk. Right? Everybody has a tribe. I really believe this, right? And today is a day that I theme, right? I call this Talking Thursdays. So my social media is always on Thursday, it's about Talking Thursdays, right? Because I do believe that everybody's voice is designed to attract, right, and affect certain people, period. There are people who, when I say something, it will hit home. There are people who, when you say something, it will hit home. And when we try to do it other ways, it will just go, dismiss them. They just don't get it, right? Because I don't have the voice for them. So this is one of the reasons why I'm always big about, you have to find your voice and you have to let it out. Right. And it's something
you have to keep repeating it and continuing.
You have to keep saying it. And you have to be the constant in your messaging, because communication equals the message sent being the message received with the same context. Otherwise, we have miscommunication. Right. And you've got to figure out how much miscommunication we have about a lot of these topics, because when I send a message, you hear me through a filter that was built by your grandparents or your great-grandparents.
Consciously and unconsciously.
Right. So it's what I said is going like this. It's not the whole thing you're getting. And you're not getting the context. So you'll get offended, number one, or you'll get scared, or you'll back away. And any one of those threes doesn't help the cause, in essence. Right? So I've got to keep saying it so that maybe a class you went in or one of your periodicals that you read that kind of cleared your filter out a bit more and it made it clearer. So now when I say, instead of it being this, you at least now get that much. There's two things that have come through. But as things are working around, when I start saying now your filter's clear, my message actually comes through. But if I stop at the second time, it never gets the chance. Yeah. Which is why this is a journey. It's a journey. You can't just
install it.
No, you can't install it. I'm mad. I wish we could go into organizations and we could install.
Just quickly install it.
Just the concept of every human deserves to be treated with the same level of respect and heard and seen. Man, if we could install that, it'd be awesome. Just like load it up as a program. Be fast. Install it. God, it would be so cool.
I was
but it's not. We're not there. And I don't think people are understanding this. This is what corporations have got to understand.
Well, I think corporations, like, it's an interesting thing. I don't know about you, but things have gotten not slow, but just a little bit slower. Because I think there's a lot of people going, ooh, are we going to be back in the office soon? Are we going to be able to do it in-person training? Like, it's not like slow, but it's just like you can feel the sense of almost like eagerness, but also like I'm done, right? Like I wanna be, and then others like, I'm not going back, right? But I feel like corporations, it's going to be an interesting thing that I'm hoping that they're going to be proactive about this. So if you're a leader in an organization, please start thinking about this. Is like, you're not just going to be dealing with, are you going back to work or staying remote? You are also dealing with the mental and physical exhaustion that take the racial dynamics out and equity, Asian dynamics out for a second, but like just purely the pandemic, purely the uncertainty from a global pandemic, the mental and physical because this is why like people keep leaving their house and they keep breaking everything, like because they're mentally and now physically exhausted, right? You're dealing with that coming back. You're dealing with people. That means lower filters, lower tolerance, still in a state of unease, because like after this long, there is no habit. Like I actually booked a trip and I was like, I found myself going, how do I use this website? I was on United nonstop. And I was like, am I doing this right? Like I was like having almost a meltdown about making sure I still knew how, like something I did
on autopilot
once a week, like, right? Now suddenly like, am I doing that right? Is this right? I haven't even been on the site in a long time. What's this doing, right? So everything's going to feel, it's not even like returning to normal, right? Like there is no returning, right?
Probably one of the things that people have to understand. You're not returning to normal. No, no, you're not. We're now going to be designing a new culture we work in, and a new way that we be, and a new way we support each other or don't support each other. That's the part that leaders are going to have to sit down and really think about.
Because if we're all for continuing the conversation, but partially what I'm thinking about today and doing that is like, I don't know if those are your leadoff questions, but yet on the same note, the problem is you're going to have a lot of people coming back going, I ain't tolerating what I did a year ago. Right. Yes. And I don't have a filter anymore and it ain't going to happen. And so it's this like, I don't even want to say perfect storm, but it's just, you've got a lot of factors.
And I think that's the key. Be prepared for some storms and tornadoes.
Because the ability for connections is going to be different, right? That it's not just, hey, you got a new team member joining the team. Let's get, right? Like, this is like, you're going to have people panicked. You're going to have people who are vaccinated, people who are not vaccinated, people, right? Like, you're going to have all these elements, then add the minority underrepresented dynamics, then add the financial implications in the corporate. It almost feels like I would think if I was the leader in an organization, I would expect like everybody's just walking on eggshells coming back. Like you should almost just expect it to be super awkward and uncomfortable and a landmine.
Knows that it might be that way. Prepare people for it. Call it out.
Like acknowledge it. Just like it is gonna be.
Call it out. We're coming back together, and our coming back together is going to be hard.
Like it is
as an organization, and where we have put in place supports. Because what
kind of supports what supports? Like I have some ideas of things. What
so one of the things I think they should have is psychological support. I think all organizations should bring some psychiatrists in, some life coaches in, and they should have them available that people can go into a space. So the space is like manned for the whole working day. Shift wise, maybe one person, whatever. So people
and on demand almost, because if like in that moment when I'm about to rip somebody's face off, I want a
number I can call or a room I can go into. You know what I mean?
I feel like I'm going to explode.
Virtual, I need to have a breakout I can go immediately dial into, and somebody's there saying, "Okay, tell me what's going on. Let's take a breath. Where are you right now?"
Because they might not even know what the trigger is. It could be so many things. It's just, they know that professionally they can't lose their crap and no longer can they just walk out of the room. Right? So I like that.
I think these are things that have to, you see, you've had humans coming to work all these years, but you've never had to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But now every leader has to acknowledge that
I would also probably throw out the don't start full throttle either. Like start with a 2-day, start with 1 day, like build, I would imagine a lot of like somebody was asking me if I thought that it should go back full 5 day. I'm like, no, I'm like, honestly, I would probably really like to where it was like a 3 or 4 day and every day, like, but it works best if everybody's remote on that same day versus some people do Tuesday, some people do Wednesday, right? Like, but I hope that it's not a full 5-day for a lot of companies and things like that. But don't go
some
back.
Companies have got to ask themselves the questions too.
Well, and it's always like when I thought about school, like I hated when school started, it was a full week. Like start on a Wednesday, people. I can only get up for so, right? Like, and it's the same dynamic for the workplace. Like don't start a Monday full throttle back. Like
back. And there is the question too, though. I mean, there are those people who so want to go back to the workplace. They really do. But then there's some people who have found a good balance in being able to work from home. I don't think that should be ripped away.
Yeah, that's why I find that there's some kind of balance there.
It really is going to have to be people really kind of saying, what's the best thing for your worker and the best thing for their team? And let people self-organize around it. Give people the power to choose.
I don't. So here's where I would counter that slightly. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody making those powers of choice right off the bat when everything is uneasy and fear is driving a lot of it, unless it is small, like we're choosing for the next 2 weeks and then reevaluating again. Because I get nervous about choices that are reactive and short-sighted versus choices.
But see, this comes back to our model that we live and breathe.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Take it piece by piece.
Well, that's what I said. Try it out. Do a little.
Try it out.
Right. Yeah.
Let people try it out. Let people see how it feels.
And how that changes. Like you might love that you're working from home, but once everybody else is in the office and then you see that and you're the only one on the Zoom, like you're like, okay, I'll come in a day. Right. Like you don't know how you're going to feel in that moment either.
You don't. You really don't. And I think it's got to be left. This is where I say it's got to be left open to the idea of that the people we've hired, we trust that these are professionals and we know that they're humans who've been through trauma, because literally the whole world has been through trauma. Right? And if you're cognizant of the fact that all your workers have been through trauma, and that's a really big thing. Right? You've got to be prepared for that. What happens when people go through trauma? They have good days. They have not so good days. Right? They have days when days when they're not.
I think the other thing is to really re-examine your policies and code of conducts and escalations and training for management on how to interrupt microaggressions and things like this. Because that filter is off. But I think the other interesting thing is that friendly tolerance when you're just on a Zoom screen and I can take versus I'm in a room with you and you make a statement. Or I've known that you've been making statements and I'm just now going to finally get to see you in person. Like, I think there's other dynamics to that, to where organizations are really going to have to look at those approaches and how do they create safety and really clearly overly communicate that. Again, be open to changing and evolving it, right? But I think, like, even for myself, I'm even thinking about that next Agile conference that we can go to in person. There are Agilists in the community that I've seen sides to that it's going to be a different relationship because we don't have to cross paths right now. Right. So like taking that outside.
I've been thinking about, funny enough.
Think of it outside of your team, but in your organization, like you saw somebody's post that's in a different part of in a different department that you don't really work with. So you can avoid and not deal with right now while you're at home, but then you're going to see them at that next event and the things that they've been saying. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I'm going to react, right? And it might be different for different people in different situations and things like that. But there's a whole nother level of, it's not just the inner team, it's the extended relationships and extended interactions that, there's a lot of people that thought almost like, maybe not thought, they believe, right? But they are saying very hateful things. And
I think it's going to be very different. It's going to be very different. because I'm wondering to myself when I'm thinking about what does for me, and this question I've asked myself, what does the Agile community look like for me now moving forward? Mm-hmm. With all the things I've heard different people say, and gone into Zoom rooms when people didn't know I was there, and so many things I've heard. Right? What are those interactions like? And what I call so many people who present, because I think our Agile community does friendly very well, right? Because we're all about having individual interactions. So we're probably really good at fake, right?
Surface.
Yeah, very, very kind of that. You know what I mean? And I think for me, I will probably be expecting more than the surface from people. So I think I will be calling out to some of those things. And where in many cases I've walked into the room feeling unwelcomed and weird being in the room, I'm not going to be going into rooms feeling weird anymore. That day is definitely over for me.
And how many Agiles would respond with, you shouldn't have felt weird, right? Like, versus acknowledging why you felt weird or what it was versus just dismissing. It's like, well, what were we supposed to do, right? And I actually do think there will, my hope is that majority of Agilists not that case, right? I'm hoping majority of Agilists are doing things like similar to me and just kind of going, oh, okay, I did this, but I didn't do this. And I like, and recognizing
working together. If those of us who are serious are going to come, and we're going to be working together, and we're going to be working together to make the world a better place. So when we talk about changing the world of work, it has to include these areas now.
Well, and it will be interesting. I actually had somebody reach out to me. A conference announcement that I'm speaking at was released, and somebody was making a comment. And somebody else saw my name on there, and then they looked me up on LinkedIn, and it turns out that they were from Michigan, or they're like, I've seen you before, but and as we were messaging kind of back and forth, and then he's like, actually, I just figured out where I remember you from, and I was like, where? And he's like, back in like 2016, 15, you went to Lizzie Morris's open space on diversity and inclusion, and I was like. And I sat next to you, and I was like, I was slightly creeped out that you remember that. but honestly, we've had so many of those that I don't know if I really remember that specific conversation or whatnot. What I do remember though is how little they're attended, right? And the fact that he could easily remember me in that moment because there wasn't that many. And this was, years and years ago. So it'll be interesting to see if there's just this like burnout or reprioritization of focus as people are coming back, or if they're going to understand the differences that maybe women felt or Black people felt or people of color felt or LGBTQ plus felt, or right, like, or are we like, I guess my hope is that Agilists are upping our game on what inclusive collaboration really means.
Again, maybe that is a whole thing in itself now, because we're fast to come up with something new, right?
Inclusive collaboration versus friendly, right?
Right, but I think that's maybe those are the things. I know a passion of mine is to put together a way to ensure you're really doing DEI while you're doing Agile. That's definitely something I want to kind of put a thing around that so people can see what that journey should be looking like.
Nice.
Because I think it's important in our space. And I really want to see us challenge organizations to do something. When we're talking about being Agile now, what does Agile look like? What is individuals in it? It's almost like there's a part of me that thinks we need one more line, but it really isn't one more line.
It just really is actually doing the line correctly.
It really is doing that line of all individuals. We said individuals, and every person that's living and breathing and came into the planet, right, as human, because we haven't recognized aliens to be here yet, right? So then we have to have another one for them. And including not officially, exactly. We haven't officially recognized them to be here yet. So we're still dealing with the human component, right? All humans are individuals. And every interaction you have with one should mean something and should be valuable and should be respectful. Every single one that you have. If we can start there and saying we have to ensure we build environments that fosters that these individuals aren't harmed, right? I think we got a place to start.
Yeah, I like it.
We got a place.
We're almost at time again.
We are, and it was interesting that we've gone at our space today. Right?
What?
That we've gone and we kind of talked to our space today about
what we want. I guess we haven't talked very much about agile.
We haven't really ever talked much about our space, but we're challenging our space today. Yeah, we're challenging our space, right?
Well, and I just challenged it the other, and I'll highlight this is there was I'm trying to think more about things, and one of the things that I learned recently was I'll make a statement. I've made this statement multiple times as a leader in an organization, like, "Hey, Lizzie, go buy the book and just expense it in." And I ended up learning not such a good approach. What's a better approach is to say, "Hey, Lizzie, we can either send you the book, or you could just go buy it and expense it in. Let me know which way is easier for you." Because then that gives that person the option if they financially do not have the means to buy the book and wait for that expense check. But you can't not call that out. And it's a book, so it's embarrassing depending on the expense of the book, right? But if you are financially in a situation where you can't do that, I won't buy the book. But then you're like, why are you not buying the book? I told you it was expensive. I can't afford to wait for that expense. So giving the option allows them to not have to feel unsafe and highlighting that financially they're not able to do that.
That's a really good one.
And I just learned this one from Jamara and was through somebody else, but like it was who's been on the caller with us. But like I was like, oh, and I've done that a ton of times, right? And so thinking about just those little things of how do I say something that makes a lot of assumptions based on maybe different privileges or different scenarios. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't take a lot to make that little bit of change. I mean, honestly, it's no big deal if we buy it and send it to you either. Mm-hmm. But it gives you then that option to choosing between them, which can be really, really powerful. And so there's just so many of these. And I feel like I learn a new one like almost every single day. And that actually makes me excited. So I think I'm holding on to hope that especially for a lot of Agilists, it's like, here's a whole nother level of engaging all the voices. Here's a whole nother level of true collaboration. Here's a whole nother level of truly seeing individuals and interactions that we get to learn. And we get to help corporations and people thrive. And that for me is exciting, but it's also, I know, really scary for a lot of people with it. But it just kind of does also feel like endless growth right now too.
Yeah, I think and I think that's where it's at. We're all doing that. I'm finding myself growing in ways I hadn't thought I would grow, but I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm growing. Okay, and now the growth spurt, right? And the thing to remember is that all growth spurts come with a little bit of pain.
So just keep the conversation going, because even every time, I don't think there's been one of these where I haven't walked away with some thought.
Yeah, likewise. It's something that's been said that's maybe going, thought about that.
So as usual, thank you. Thank you for those listening in to the live or to the recordings.
Right. And let me just make sure I say something, because we were talking about connections and whatever. The reason, just so the reason Trish doesn't know about the fire, a lot of my friends don't know about the fire, right? So I haven't, when it happened, I didn't call through my mother found out because
I expected you did that on purpose to get my reaction on screen where I'm like, oh, what?
No, I didn't. So it wasn't. I haven't. There are a lot of people who are in my life who don't know. You know, it's kind of like I text Devon like way after the fact that it had happened. Later on, I text him, and then
he's like, thanks.
Like, right. So I just didn't, I didn't.
I could have helped.
Yeah, I didn't bring people in on it in the moment because I was still digesting it, and that's just one of my things.
You're right.
That's one of my things. When stuff happens to me, that's kind of like I gotta work it through to see the angles and see the insights I'm supposed to get from it and what it's doing for me before I can really kind of articulate it really well. So it's like on Tuesday I talked about it to the ladies, and I'm still in that space of I'm still trying to get my head around it a little bit, right? So that's me again. The one area of my life I am working on, I'm growing, small little spurts, it's incremental, is this whole thing when things hit my emotions of how best to articulate and still allow people who care to be included in that journey with me. Because I know they want to be, but I've got to allow them to be, right? So it's one thing you wanting to help people, but if people don't allow you to get into help, you got to stay on the outskirts until you're given the invitation. It's what it is, right? And that's the same when we're talking about these organizations and people having the conversation. We want you to have the conversations, but we can't force you to do them until you're ready. But we do want to say, although it may seem scary, it's not as scary as the story in your head. Right? It really isn't as scary as the story in your head. So people, keep having conversations, keep doing it piece by piece and incrementing. We will still be here, right? And every 2 weeks on a Thursday, we will show up and have conversations so you can look at them, hear them. Hopefully they'll inspire you to keep on going. This is a journey, people. We've been doing this since last year, girl, and we're still on it, right? This is a journey. Stay the course, people. Stay the course. Take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.